This is Kent Hance, best storyteller in Texas. We always start with the saying of the day, and the saying today is the most valuable math you can learn is how to calculate the future cost of your present decisions. That's really good. Mm-hmm. You know, and how many times you sit there and you're trying to figure it out and you're hoping you're right, and later you're thrilled because you were right, or you're really disappointed because you were way off base. It's Labor Day, and we've got a lot going on. You know, in the United States, we work longer hours, and I was looking. Americans they'll work 1,750 hours a year. Europeans are around 1,350 to 1,600, and that if you look at the average hour basis in the United States, it's 38 hours, and it's 37 in Europe
per week.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but you know, it adds up. It's 4 months and 48, and so if you look at that, it's equivalent of 6 days less. And on vacation, the Europeans, you know, I don't know how they get anything done. They're always going on vacation. August, you can't get anything done in August. But they'll have vacation days. I was reading 26 to 38 days annually for vacation. So 38 days, you've got a month and a week. You've got five weeks, a little over 5 weeks, and those are mandated by the government. In the United States, it's up to the employer, and it's competitive. And an employer that gives no holidays or anything not going to get as good employees. But most of our workers, we give the equivalent of 2 weeks, but most of them want to spread it out. They'll take 3 or 4 days or 5 days during Christmas, along with the Christmas holidays, and they'll take some in the summer. And that way they'll utilize more. There's not a federal mandate on this, and the employers decide. And most of them will be 10 days or 2 weeks, something like that. But you don't have 38 days. I don't know of a business. I've never heard of a business in the United States that gives you 38 days, and that's 5 in a week. That'd be the total of 7.5 weeks. Vacation. Then you're not real productive when you go back. You're trying to figure out, now what do I do on this deal? And so it's starting all over.
How old were you when you started working at the Texaco on the corner?
Texaco, I was 13.
13.
And there wouldn't be a job for me now. They'd protect me, and I wouldn't have a job. I proposed one time when I was in Congress, and boy, everybody jumped all over me, that you could have a lower wage for summer student workers, try to get people to hire them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, the labor people, really got upset about it. Mm-hmm. And it creates some bad situations. But the U.S., it's employer discretion. Most of your big companies are going. You take an AT&T or Exxon or somebody like that, they're going to have a couple of weeks that you take off.
You learned a lot of lessons at that Texaco, though, didn't you?
I did. I learned a lot, and they were paying me, and I learned, how to fix flats, how to wait on the public, and how to always say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, and be polite. And customers are always right. Walmart figured that out, and Sam Walton said it, but J.B. Raper and Sam, they had it figured out in the 50s, and when I was working. Customers always right. Okay.
And 70 years later, you still remember how to answer the phone, right?
Yeah,
at Texaco.
Yeah.
What was it?
J.B. and Frank's Texaco here on the south side of the square in Dimmick. Can I help you?
There you go. I love that.
I saw that guy when I was in Congress. I was speaking at an event in Hereford, and the guy walked up, and I saw him, and I said, J.B. and Frank's Texaco, south side of the square right here in Dimmick. May I help you? And he started laughing. He said, I told you, don't you ever forget it. And he said, I'm glad that you still got it. So, I learned a lot, and I had good bosses. And like I said, there's some of them I've lost track of. there was a guy named Artie Findley, and last I heard him, he lived in Wichita Falls, and he'd be in his 90s by now. But one time he was doing something. I said, Artie, if you keep doing that, they'll fire you. And he said, I was looking for a job when I found this one. He wasn't going to waste any sweat, any time. He was looking for a job when I found this one. I said, oh, okay. And we had a truck pull in one time, bobtail truck. They had potatoes or something they were filling up. And one of the guys came in the truck, and the gasoline caught on fire. There was a fire out there. And, he called the operator. Then you didn't dial 911. That hadn't been invented. Internet. Al Gore hadn't invented the internet yet. And so he calls the operator. There's no boy out of Colorado driving a bobtail truck pulled in here, and he's hauling potatoes, and said, tell her it's on fire. And he said, and anyway, they wanted us to fill up the gas and check oil and everything. He's going to tell the whole story. Didn't want to leave anything out. And I said, tell her it's right. And he goes, and it's on fire. It's in the fire truck. And fire truck, we had a guy named Ruben Mayfield, and one of his relatives took my class, and her name was Saunders, out of Denver, and a really bright girl, had a 4.0, and I think she's going to go to law school or MBA or something someday. But her relatives were the Ruben Mayfield, were the Mayfield family out of Demet. Mm-hmm. And they could all sing well, and some of them played guitar and some of them played fiddle. But Ruben drove the fire truck, and he had his left below the knee shot off during the World War II. And he had a wooden peg leg. And so he would drive the fire truck, but he couldn't close the door, And he'd be driving, and a woman pulled out in front of him in Hart, Texas, and he ran into her. And it slammed the door on his wooden leg and cut the wooden leg off, and left it in splinters. And so when the ambulance got there, they asked Ruben, you want us to go to the hospital or the sawmill? he used to tell that story all the time. Go to the sawmill or the hospital? We'll look and see. But he had a good sense of humor, and they were good people. Great musicians. One thing I want to mention today is that in 2008, the market on September 29th had a tremendous drop, and it had a big impact on the presidential election. Going into the 29th, John McCain, U.S. Senator from Arizona, a guy I served with in the House, was leading Obama, and the Obama-Biden ticket was in second place, and they had McCain had a pretty good lead, and then the market just crashed. It fell 7% in one day, and a lot of people go back and think, what if that hadn't happened? I think McCain would have probably won. What would he have done over the next 4 years or 8 years that would have been better? He probably would have kept people from fighting each other and be at each other's throats as much as it has been ever since then. But what had happened up before 2008, the government had really pushed hard for people to own a house, and they created all kinds of agendas where you could buy a house pretty cheap, didn't have to have you didn't have down payment if you were below a certain income level. And it worked and get a lot of people in houses, but a lot of people couldn't afford the house. You look at a house and you think it's going to cost X dollars, but you've also got to, will you get a lawnmower? Are you going to get a lawnmower service? Or, what are you going to do? And I think that's important that, for people to realize what they can do. There was a story the other day. It talked about buying a house now versus renting. And if you rent, you're renting for a certain amount. But if you buy a house, you're going to have $100,000 to put down, or at least 50 or something like that. And so there are certain benefits to both. And but when we had the market crash in 2008, it affected everyone's 401k or their retirement plans, whatever they were doing, and that the bubble burst on the financing of the houses. And some of the houses were financed at pretty low interest rates, and the government let up. They had lackadaisical, they had the problems that they couldn't get around. They'd made it so easy for everyone to kind of buy a house, and some people could not make the payment. But they had consolidated all those housing loans and put them in packages for people to buy, for companies to buy. And they bought a lot of them, and then some of them started getting foreclosed on. And when they did, what they had purchased was not worth as much, and so the market started down. And once it started down, it didn't let up and had a tremendous drop. The housing bubble, that also the government had encouraged people to buy houses because they relaxed the standards on what you had to have down and what kind of clarification you had to have on your credit rating. And that was...
Yeah, they were saying back then if you could write your name, you could get a house.
Yeah, and you could, and that sounds good, but that's... Iceland, their banking system in 2008 and 2009 collapsed, went completely under. But a 7% drop on one day in stock market's pretty healthy. And I think the low interest rates, they're always good for certain things, and President Trump's trying to get them to lower them now. But it got people buying things that they could not afford, and it caught up with them. It encouraged more borrowing, and when people would loan the money, they would want to consolidate all the loans and then sell those as a security, and it just didn't work. They bundled those mortgages, and everybody bought them for a while.
That led to a whole revamping of the way the mortgage system was done with Dodd-Frank.
It did. With the Dodd-Frank, and you had others that had come about when you had the Enron deal, and everybody had an opinion on what should be done. And it was Congress, many times, there'll be a problem come up, and they'll overreact. They'll do more than they should. In Iceland, they had your three major banks went under, and so the International Monetary Fund had to come in and kind of, bail them out. Iceland was, they were a banking center at one time, and it's a beautiful place, but it's not a friendly place to banks anymore. Because the government, they really tightened it up, and they also made it complicated. On the mortgage-backed securities, they made it very complicated. And it goes back to what Miss Littlepage taught me in bookkeeping at Dimmitt. The more complicated accounting it is, the easier it is for people to steal from you. She always said, the more complicated you can make it in accounting, the easier it is for people to take advantage of you and steal from you. And that, she always liked that you got, money going in, money coming out. More comes out and goes in, you're going broke. It's pretty simple. Federal government hadn't caught on to that yet, but they're working on it. We'll see what happens.
Didn't you use her line in Congress?
I did, and Dick Durbin, a friend of mine, who we never voted the same. He was a liberal Democrat from Chicago, and he was in Congress, and then he ran for the Senate. He's retiring now, but he was in the Senate a long time. And I bumped into him in the Senate in the Capitol by the elevators, and he goes, "Hance, how's Miss Littlepage doing?" I said, "She's rolling in her grave. She sees what y'all spending money on, And he laughed. He was good-natured. Also, Congress didn't help a lot. They had a bailout that they were going to try to do, and it didn't pass. Mm-hmm. And I think that made some people stop and think, what happens next? Because there's a lot of those businesses, a lot of the banks had a New Century Financial went under, and that was the first one to go under. And after that, Lehman Brothers went into bankruptcy, and so it was a scary time. And I was so busy at Texas Tech, I didn't have time to decide to sell or not sell, and I just kind of wrote it out. And people that did my stock for me in the next year and a half, 2 years, they gained everything back, and we're doing extremely well. On other items today, we've got several things that I wanted to mention. That a guy was stopped in Canada for speeding, and asked him if there was a reason. And he said, "I'm about to run out of gas, so I got to get there faster." I would say, can you come up with something a little better? If I were the policeman, I'd say, let me give you one more chance. And I was running, and then another person, this was in Kansas, 44-year-old guy, got a sexual battery charge filed on him because he tried to kiss the female cop that stopped him and tried to kiss her on the neck, and that was not his smartest move.
Did you happen to see the story of that district attorney in Rhode Island that was getting arrested, and she kept saying, I'm a DA, you're going to regret this"?
Yeah, and she had to resign before it was all over. I saw it on the internet, and there were two policemen there, mm-hmm. and she was talking down to them. And her daughter and her daughter's friends went to Yale. Mm-hmm. And she kept telling these two policemen, well, they go to Yale, and they're, the law doesn't say you can go 10 miles an hour over if you go to Yale. It doesn't say that. And those policemen were trying to enforce the law.
Yeah, these ladies were getting asked to leave a restaurant or a bar or something. Yeah. And she got suspended.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not a good look.
Anytime there was an incident in Texas politics about 20 years ago where a politician in Texas called the police and said, told them what his problem is. They'd stopped his nephew's girlfriend or something, and they need to, throw away the ticket. It's just, and he said, "Do you know who I am?" Mm-hmm. Look, if you say, "Do you know who I am?" If they do, then it didn't affect them, or they are going to do something. But if you say that, it's going to make them madder. Mm-hmm. It's just stupid. Do you know who I am? That's one of the worst mistakes that somebody can make that's in politics. Nike, they had one of their logos is "Just Do It," and that comes from Gary Gilmore, who had killed two people in Utah, and they gave him the death penalty, and they got there ready to inject him, and he said, "Just do it." Mm-hmm. And so it kind of caught on. I was kind of surprised when Nike came up with that. And
pretty effective slogan, though, even though it's
just do it.
Yeah,
he wanted to get it over with. Mm-hmm. He should have told them, bury the dead and move on. It was his time. There's an article out about what are the Guinness Book of World Records that have not been broken. Mm-hmm. And you can just go on the internet and look for it and everything, but there's a lot of them that are just crazy about how many times you can change a T-shirt in a minute. Well, I'm not going to worry about that. Survey came out last week. What people say are the most useless jobs where people get paid for doing whatever. And they had one of the top ones was influencing. They're the influencers on the internet, and that they pay you a certain amount of thing. And there's a friend of mine, his daughter is a an influencer on the internet. Mm-hmm. She'll wear certain clothes and influence people what to wear, and that's a useless job that you get paid for. Useless or not, if they're going to pay you for it, then go ahead.
And if you get them to buy your product, it's not so useless. Right?
No, it becomes pretty useful then. Multi-level marketing, I don't know about that. I mean, that's done a lot on the internet, and a lot of people think that it's a waste of time.
That's the old Amway angle, wasn't it? Yeah. Didn't they do that?
Amway.
Yeah.
You sign up somebody, and they'd work for you, and they signed up somebody. Mm-hmm. If you got the top of the pyramid, you might have 20 people working for you. Mm-hmm. If you got the bottom pyramid, you're going to have to pedal a lot faster. Politicians, useless job people get paid for. That's wrong. They don't, like in Texas in the legislature, they get $600 a month. Mm. Last time that was raised, it was raised from $400 to $600, and I was there, and I voted against it. Senator Bill Moore from College Station in Bryan, he said, I'm not going to vote for it. I've got an amendment. His amendment made it $80,000.
Oh,
and he said, if I'm going to catch hell over voting for a pay increase, I want it to be worthwhile. So he's the one time that if you run for office, you get all these questionnaires, and the questions most of the time are slanted, and they're trying to get you in a position that you'll have to say yes to whatever they want. And Senator Moore had an amendment one time that on an ethics bill that he wanted it to be a felony if you ask people, fill out your questionnaire twice. That once it'd be a misdemeanor, but if you ask them twice, it'd be a felony. It didn't get adopted, but he would always have some funny, amendments, and they finally caught up. And a guy named Kent Caperton beat him in a campaign that was really a long and tough campaign. The other people that said that useless jobs where they get paid, life coaches. You don't have that much here in Texas, but in California, somebody just goes out, I'm a life coach. Mm-hmm. How you doing? Well, I'm on my 7th divorce. So you're a life coach for me, I don't think so. Bathroom attendants. Only time you really see many bathroom attendants is in Europe. And I one time went in place in Paris, and I was getting ready to leave, and I didn't have any change. And when they finally, I had a $20 American bill, and they gladly took that. After that, I, had a little.
What, he just hand you a paper towel or something, or?
They hand you a paper towel, and they're standing there, and supposedly to help you. I don't know. I mean, I gave her the 20 and moved on. Said that was a learning experience.
Felt like saying I've gone to the bathroom my entire life without an attendant.
Without an attendant, I've been able to do it on my own. Survey on the top 3 scariest natural disasters. It didn't include hurricanes.
Yeah, this is the 20th anniversary of Katrina.
Yeah,
right now.
And tornado was number 1. People most scared, but you have some warning on tornadoes, and you can see them. 2 was the tsunami. And I agree with that. I mean, that's a scary situation. Now, if you're at the beach and all of a sudden the water is backed out a quarter of a mile, run, to high ground as fast as you can. Earthquakes. See, those are scary to me because you don't have any warning, and that it can be bad. 4th was a hurricane. 5th was a wildfire. I think that's very scary. At the speed of the wind, and it carried. Flash floods, we're familiar with that. And, with the flash floods, you look at everything that people went through in Kerrville. Mm. Legislature in Texas has passed some legislation to try to remedy the many reasons that so many people drown. And they've really worked at that. And the blizzard was next, and then the mudslide, that'd get my attention.
It would.
But on a hurricane, you got the prospect of getting out of the way, running best you can. Football, we had a big weekend. Longhorns had a tough time in Columbus, but it seemed to me watching that game, the offensive and defensive line of Ohio State kind of controlled it, and they have big guys. I mean, they probably had to burn diesel, instead of eating things, they'll burn diesel. Coming back to saying of the day, the most valuable math you can learn is how to calculate the future cost of your current decisions. It's really good. Talk to you next week.